Just a small town girl living in a lonely world. She took the midnight train going anywhere. I'm just a city boy, born and raised in South Detroit. He took the midnight train going anywhere. In a smoky room, the smell of wine and cheap perfume. For a smile they can share the night. It goes on and on and on and on. Strangers waiting up and down the boulevard. Their shadows searching in the night. To find emotion hiding somewhere in the night. Working hard to get my fill. Everybody wants the thrill. Paying anything to roll the dice. One more time. Some will win, some will lose. Some are born to sing the blues. Oh, the movie never ends. It goes on and on and on and on. Strangers waiting up and down the boulevard. Their shadows searching in the night. Streetlights, people living just to find emotion hiding somewhere in the night.
Good morning. Happy Easter to all you guys. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. You're welcome to stand or sit on this first part, but as we begin, how about just turn to somebody next to you and say, hi, welcome, good to see you. Happy Easter.
When
what I see. Do you see?
Do you see? Do you see?
What I see?
What I see? What I see?
Do you see?
Do you see? Do you see?
What I see?
What I see? What I see?
Do you see?
Do you see? Do you see?
What I see?
Well, good morning. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Or Hoppy Easter?
Hoppy
Sorry, I
Easter.
couldn't
I like
hold
that one
back.
better.
Sorry. Hi, good morning, guys. My name is Kyle. I'm the youth pastor. This is Bailey. He runs our young adults here, and we are just glad to have you here at Steamboat Christian Center, where everything we do is centered around loving God and loving people. And so if you're new or newish, you just started coming, we would love to come meet you after Pastor Troy's done speaking. We'll be right down over here, and we just want to say hi and start a conversation with you and say Happy Easter.
Yeah, happy Easter, everyone. Hey, there is a QR code on the back of the chair in front of you. You can scan that. This is a great way to stay connected throughout the message, throughout the week, throughout the month, and things like that. And we just want to let you know about a couple things that are coming up. First thing is If Gathering. That's coming up on April 27th and April 28th. And that's for the ladies.
Yeah,
Is there any ladies in the house tonight?
Can we hear it, ladies?
Is there any ladies? Come on. So that's for you ladies. It's going to be a great opportunity to connect and make some friends with some other ladies and also be changed.
Yeah, speaking of being changed, we are taking our middle schoolers and our high schoolers to summer camp, and we want you guys to come with us. So we have a high school camp going to New Mexico in June, and then we have a middle school camp going to Estes Park in July. It's going to be so much fun. I promise you, money back guarantee that it is going to be the best week of summer. And so you can sign up online, you can come talk to me, but don't miss it. Spots are going quickly, and I promise you, parents, kids will not come back the same.
Yeah, they're going to come back changed, okay?
100%.
They're going to come back. They're going to scrub the dishes. They're going to mow the lawn.
No, I'm not promising that. It's an inside thing.
Okay, maybe not all that, okay? But they are going to come back changed, and they're going to find their purpose in Jesus.
Yes, for sure. Well, hey, in a couple minutes, we're going to go into our last week of Don't, where we're going through a couple series of things this guy named Jesus said don't and do. And so if you've been following it, it's been amazing. If you've missed it, I encourage you guys, go online and watch them on YouTube. Stay up to date with us because they've been life-changing. And so we just want to say welcome and happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Of all things bright and beautiful, you exist a miracle. You saw that it was good.
In a garden made for rest, heart of man put to the test, and the fall forever changed the way I see
Through the years, the prophets spoke to wayward hearts and stubborn souls. You had a plan to bring us us for. You saw that it was good. From foreign lands and earthly gods to idols that became a cost. Your holy reputation lost. You saw that it was good. In the garden of no rest, heart of God in blood and sweat, where his love began to change the way I see the world.
On the way suffering, behold the man, the King of Kings, scorned for everyone to see. Up the hill of Calvary, my sin displayed upon a tree, and every thought convicted me. All the word was put to rest when he finally bowed his head,
And the blood of Jesus changed the way I see the world. When the storm was rolled away, then only grace remained, and the love of God has changed the way I see the world. Now I wait in joyful hope for the coming of the Lord.
praying no one would come to know the way you see the world.
Well, good morning. Look at y'all packed in here, man. I love it. I'll make this brief. Has anybody got a brunch that they got scheduled? Anybody? I don't. Can I go with you? I forgot, but well, good morning, guys. Thank you for being here. My name is Troy, and glorious day. I'm just going to start off by telling you something. I love Easter. I love me some Easter. It wasn't always that way. I wasn't raised in church, and I didn't know anything. But, man, I love Easter, and I know considering what I do for a living, you're probably not surprised to hear that. But I love everything about it. I love the nice outfits. By the way, what do you think? Oh, it's just a little something I put together. If you're a guest with us, I never dress up, and this is as good as it's going to get. So enjoy, take a picture. But I love the outfits. I love baptism that we're going to be doing at the end of today's service. I love chocolate Easter bunnies, as you can tell. I got too many peeps, Any peeps? I love that. Yeah, I love our egg hunt. Man, thank you for everyone that helped put together that great egg hunt yesterday. Give yourself a big hand. I appreciate that. So, but here's the thing. More than that, I love Easter because we get to talk about the resurrection of Jesus. I'm telling you, every Sunday we get together and we talk about something. But today we get to talk about the thing. This is the Super Bowl. We're talking about the resurrection of Jesus. And the thing that makes that so exciting is this. It raises a question that I believe everyone needs to ask at some point in their life. This brings up a question that everyone should ask. And maybe you haven't asked it since you were a little kid, or maybe you haven't asked it since you left your faith back in college. Maybe you've never asked this question, but I believe this is a question everyone should ask, and it's this. Who is Jesus? I mean, we got to wrestle with that. Who is Jesus? And the reason I say this is that the resurrection, get this, the resurrection is what convinced those people back in the first century to believe that Jesus was the Son of God, that he was literally God in a bod. It was the resurrection. It wasn't Jesus' teaching that convinced them, and it wasn't his tricks or his miracles or however you want to categorize those that convinced them. It was the resurrection that convinced them. In fact, if you're here this morning and this is your first time here with us, you need to know something about us, okay? Are you ready? Here it is, and it's this. We don't believe that Jesus rose from the dead because the Bible tells us so. Now, it's way, way better than that. I mean, it's much more substantial than that, is what I mean. We believe that Jesus rose from the dead because I'll tell you why. Because a first century Jewish tax collector by the name of Matthew saw it and wrote it down for us. He saw some things and he wrote it down. We believe because a Greek named Mark, who was a friend of Peter, wrote down Peter's eyewitness account of what Peter saw, and we still have a record of that. We believe that. We believe because a Greek doctor by the name of Luke, who, by the way, traveled all over Asia and Europe, and he traveled all over Judea, and he interviewed, think about this, he interviewed hundreds of people who said that they saw the resurrected Jesus. And Luke wrote down, and we have an account of that. We believe because a guy named Paul, who, by the way, this is interesting, was a Jewish Pharisee, which is the same group that planned Jesus' execution. We believe because Paul stepped onto the pages of history as someone who hated Christians. In other words, if you're here this morning and you don't like Christians too much, you would love Paul. Paul committed his whole life to stopping the spread of Christianity. And then one day, suddenly and unexpectedly, he converted and he became one of its biggest advocates. We believe that. And here's my favorite. We believe that Jesus raised from the dead because James, the brother of Jesus, concluded that his brother Jesus was the Son of God. Let me just ask you, what would it take for your brother to convince you that he was the Son of God? A lot, right? And he did. And James, you know, here's the thing about it. James early on wasn't a believer. He didn't believe it. He wasn't impressed by Jesus' sermons. He wasn't impressed by his supposed miracles. But after the resurrection, James definitely believed. He definitely believed. He believed so much so that he was stoned. Not Colorado stoned. I mean like Old Testament stoned to death. He was stoned to death because he wouldn't stop telling people that Jesus had risen from the dead. I'm telling you, all of these brave people documented what they saw and heard. And yes, it's true. Years and years later, their letters and their writings were collected and put into a volume that you and I today call the Bible. But I'm telling you, long before the Bible came along, there were hundreds of men and women who saw something that changed their lives irrevocably. That's why we believe. Now, one of the things I've often found interesting and fascinating about this is that these people were brutally honest. They told the truth, and they told the truth about themselves. They didn't write themselves into the story as heroes or as true believers. No. In fact, they wrote themselves into the story as doubters, just like us. They doubted. Even though Jesus told them that he was going to come back from the dead, they didn't believe him. They expected Jesus to do what all dead people do, okay? And that is stay dead. In fact, this is true. Nobody expected nobody. Nobody was there. None of them were standing outside the tomb that Sunday morning, counting down backwards from 10, like 10, 9, 8, cue the sunrise, 7, 6, 5, 4, roll the stone, 3, 2, 1, ta-da! None of them were there because everyone who believed in Jesus no longer believed in him anymore. There were no Christians anywhere that Sunday morning. They all were convinced that they had been fooled, or at very least been misled. I mean, the problem with Jesus wasn't what he taught or what he did. The problem with Jesus is what he claimed about himself. Jesus didn't say that he was a great teacher or that he was a great prophet. Jesus said that he was the Son of God. And you and I know you can't kill the Son of God. But there he was, dead, hanging on a cross. And all of their hopes were dead with him. Now, at the very least, they kind of hoped that he would at least be the king. He'd be a new king, that he would lead them out from this oppression under Rome. In fact, just a few days before all of that happened, Jesus entered Jerusalem to enormous fanfare. Apparently, supposedly, Jesus raised this guy by the name of Lazarus back to life in a little village on the other side of Jerusalem, and everybody lost their minds. I mean, everybody heard it, so much so that the entire city of Jerusalem came out to greet Jesus as he came into the city, and they gave him shouts of praises, and they're like, here comes the new king. They just welcomed him like a conquering king. And this, of course, threatened the status quo. His enemies that day decided, we've got to put this guy to death. This is dangerous. But his followers at this point were convinced that they had won. They had won this thing. And their faith in him was never higher because of this new thing that Jesus had done. In fact, just a few days after that, Jesus met with his disciples for the Jewish Passover. He met with his 12 disciples, and during that meal, Jesus announced a new covenant. A new covenant. That's a new agreement, a new deal between God and man. You're probably familiar with the Old Covenant. The Old Covenant, that was established by Moses, right? He gave it to the people. It was ratified by God when God etched the 10 Commandments into stone with his finger, right, up on Mount Sinai. But the New Covenant, Jesus was established by Jesus and ratified by God when God allowed his son's hands and feet to be nailed to a Roman cross. The Old Covenant, as you might know, was given to a very specific group of people for a very specific time. But the New Covenant was for everyone. It was for the world, for you and I. And the Old Covenant was complicated. If you've read it, you know it was hard. There was hundreds of commandments and hundreds of laws in it, and it was really complicated. The New Covenant was simple. It had one command, one commandment. Jesus, when he met with his disciples at that meal, said, "A new commandment I give you. Love each other as I've loved you." Love each other as I loved you. And the very next day, Jesus would give a demonstration of his love that would take their breath away. So, at night, though, the powers that be were ready for Jesus. One of his followers, as you know the story, had betrayed Jesus, and they helped the religious leaders put their plan into action. And within a day, Jesus had been arrested, beaten, whipped, tried, sentenced, convicted, and then led outside the city to be executed. Now, the Roman governor at the time, his name was Pilate. Pilate couldn't find any guilt in Jesus that warranted a death sentence. But the Jewish leaders pressed him hard. They're like, no, 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 no. He claims to be the Son of God. And Pilate's like, who cares? That's a religious issue. That's between you and him. And they're like, well, okay. He also claims to be a new king. And Pilate, you are no friend to Caesar if you let this man live. And so Pilate gave in, and he sentenced Jesus to death by crucifixion. Now, here's where I'll get you. One of the eyewitnesses to all of this was a young man who followed Jesus around Judea during the previous 3 years and wrote down what he saw. His name was John. And John, in John's written account that we still have today, he says that immediately after Pilate sentenced Jesus, that the soldiers took charge of Jesus. And they made him carry his own cross, and they went out to the place of the skull. That's a hillside just on the outside of the old city walls that literally looks like a human skull. It's still there today. It is eerie. It's crazy. In verse 18, John says, there they crucified him with 2 others, one on each side and Jesus in the middle. It's interesting. That's all that John says about what happened on that. He knew that he doesn't have to explain crucifixion. His readers back then knew exactly what crucifixion was. I mean, everyone had seen one. It was brutal. Hundreds of thousands of people have been crucified by Rome, and it was one of the most horrible things. In fact, there were easier ways to kill somebody and to punish them than crucifixion. This was a long, drawn-out process, but there was a purpose to it. 2 things. They wanted people to be in terror when they saw it. In other words, don't do what this person did. And they basically wanted to wipe you off the face of the earth. A person would die on a cross, they would take your body, throw it in the dump, and dogs would eat the flesh. You and I hardly know anybody. There's 2 people in history we know who've been crucified. Spartacus and Jesus. But there have been countless others, and they've all been taken off of the pages of history. And so he didn't have to explain more of what happened there. But then, here's the interesting thing. John gives us a little detail. And it's interesting what he does here. He knows that he's recording this for history's sake. And yet he adds a little tidbit in there that seems unnecessary. But it's clear that it's personal to him. As John stood at the foot of the cross, and he's looking at Jesus, wanting to look away, but not able to. Unlike everybody else, same thing, they just were horrified. Jesus speaks to his mother from the cross. His mother is standing right next to John. And Jesus says this, John says, dear woman, here is your son. And then Jesus looks at John and he says, and here is your mother. This is Jesus' way of saying, take care of my mom. And then John records Jesus' final words on the cross. Jesus said, it is finished. What was finished? The old order of things, the old covenant, all the laws and commandments, and do this and don't do that, and be perfect, and all this stuff, and you got to bring an animal every year up to the temple. The temple system was finished. Got to sacrifice it. That was all done. Jesus said, it is completed. And then Jesus bowed his head and he gave up his spirit. Now, what John writes next is super interesting. It's if he catches himself in this. This is fascinating. Again, he's been given a historical account of the 3 years that he's been following Jesus, and he's writing down all these things, all these miracles, and all these teachings that Jesus did, and now he's writing about the crucifixion, and it's as if John suddenly realizes that all of that might seem a bit unbelievable to those who are reading or hearing what he wrote. Just like us. That there might be some people who hear this and doubt it a little bit. And so John adds a statement that you and I, you may have read this before, you just skipped right over, but you and I would do well to pause and reflect on this a bit. In verse 35, John is talking in the third person, okay, as they often did. He write in the third person, and he says this. He says, the man who saw this has given his testimony. And his testimony is true. In other words, I swear to you that this is what happened. I I saw this. I saw this happen. I saw it with my own eyes. I swear to you, this is what happened. And then it's as if John reaches through the centuries and through history, and he reaches out and he grabs you and I by our shoulder. And he looks you and I in the eye, and this is what he says. He says, and he is telling the truth so that you also may believe. You might be doubting, but I'm telling you the truth so that you can believe. In other words, because of what I saw, you too can believe because of what I'm telling you. You can believe because of what he's telling you. Now, to you and I, we may hear that and we're like, okay, that's cool, fine. We believe what you're saying so far, John. I mean, so far, what have you said? You said that there's this Jewish wannabe Messiah who got executed by Rome. That happened all the time. We believe you, John. Sure. To which John would say, okay, buckle your seatbelt because you might not believe what happens next. He says this, and he tells us a story. In verse 38, he says, later on, Joseph of Arimathea, a man by the name of Joseph of Arimathea, asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. And with Pilate's permission, he quickly took the body away. As I said, normally a body would be taken down from this, thrown in the dump, eaten by dogs. Joseph might have hoped that Jesus was this new king, but now he knows. And so Jesus wasn't what he said he was, but he felt like he deserved better than that. He felt like he deserved at least a burial. So he pulls the body and gets permission to do that. It says this, that Joseph was accompanied by a man by the name of Nicodemus. Now, some of you may have heard of Nicodemus. Nicodemus was the Pharisee who had secretly visited Jesus at night. Here's what's fascinating about this. John is naming names. He's telling the true story about what happened here, and he's naming names. Because before the crucifixion, these guys kept their relationship with Jesus totally on the down low. They kept it secret out of fear. But now, apparently, they don't care that John is using their names and telling the world what they've done. They don't care. And so it makes you wonder, what changed? What happened? Right? Well, John then tells us that they're taking Jesus' body. The two of them wrapped it up with spices and in strips of linen. And they did this in accordance with Jewish burial customs. In other words, he knows that some of us wouldn't understand what they're doing. We're not Jews. So he tells us this is something that we did as Jews. And then he goes on, he says, near the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden. And in the garden, there was a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid before. Now, this is an interesting detail. Back then, you may not know this, follow me. They would not put one body in one tomb. They would put several bodies in a tomb. They didn't have room. They didn't have enough caves to do this. They would wrap them up and they'd put them in there. And about a year later, the family would come and they would gather the bones of the deceased. And they'd put those bones in an ossuary box, which is a box, a bone box. We have urns and collect ashes. They had bones and had boxes. But John says this, because it was a Jewish day of preparation. In other words, it was the day before Sabbath. And since the tomb was right there nearby, they laid Jesus in there. What John is saying is that they were in a hurry. The sun was about to set, and they could not do this or anything else once the Sabbath began. And so these two men and their servants rolled the stone back over the tomb, and then they quickly left for their homes. Now, we have no idea what Peter and John and all of these other disciples did that night, or what they did the next day or the next night. We know that they were definitely hiding. Most of them were hiding in the city because they were afraid that everybody was coming after them. We don't know what they talked about and what they discussed, but we can imagine that they were grief-stricken. Their friend was dead. Also, I've thought about this. Things that happened so quickly. I mean, that Jesus was gone like that. And it happened so quickly. And my assumption is that they didn't really have time to process. And finally it started to dawn on them, it's over. This parade, this thing that we got caught up with a few years ago, it's over. Suddenly, after 3 years, it's all over. Was it a waste of our time? Did we waste our lives on this? But John tells us that early Sunday morning, they were awakened by a knock on the door. Now, they instantly thought it has to be Roman soldiers coming to get us, But then they realized a Roman soldier wouldn't knock, they would kick the door in. And so they go to the door, they open it up, and there is Mary Magdalene standing there. Mary was one of Jesus' most devoted followers. Jesus had healed her 3 years before, and she had been following him from the beginning, and she's sobbing, and she's hysterical and confused. And they're like, what's up? And she said, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him. And the guys are like, who has taken him? I mean, who is they? What are you talking about, Mary? And so Mary tells them, she says, I went to the tomb early this morning to grieve, and when I got there, the stone had been rolled to the side, and the body had been taken. Now that's interesting. She didn't say the body had risen. She said it was taken. Again, these people didn't write themselves in the story as true believers because none of them believed that Jesus would rise from the dead. They all instantly assumed that there were grave robbers, that someone had stolen the body. And so Peter, and check this out, it says this, John says, so Peter and the other disciple, again, John is talking about himself, they started for the tomb. Both were running, and this is funny. But the other disciple, again, he's talking about himself, outran Peter and made it to the tomb first. I win. He put that in the story. It's funny. And I just bet you, here's how it happened. I bet you as John was remembering the story and writing it down, that he remembered this detail and he kind of chuckled to himself. And by this time that John was writing this, Peter had been executed in Rome by Nero. And I think John probably thought, well, Peter's not here anymore. He wouldn't be embarrassed if I had told it this. But people need to know that I was faster than him. So he puts it in there. But then John realizes that if I tell that part of the story, I need to tell this part. And so he tells on himself. He tells us that when he got to the outside of the tomb, that he bent over and he looked in at the strips of linen that were lying there, but he did not go in. He's like, I gotta be honest, I didn't go in. Why, John? Why wouldn't you go in? Because it was a little dark. It was a tomb. I ain't going into that. That's freaky and creepy, right? But then he tells us that Simon Peter came along behind him, and he went straight into the tomb. Why would he tell us? Because that's something Peter would do. Peter was one of those act first, think second type of guys. He rolls right into the tomb, and when Peter got in there, he saw something strange. And he tells us, he saw, now you've read this before, but I bet you never caught this. He saw strips of linen lying there in the tomb, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. Now get this, the cloth was folded up and lying apart from the other wrappings. In other words, whoever stole the body, this wasn't a rush job, right? This wasn't, if you're stealing a body, you're getting in and out of there, right? Thieves would not have taken the time, number one, to disembalm the body and unwrap it. They would have just taken it as is. And they certainly wouldn't have folded up the linens before leaving. We need to tidy this up. Who would have done that? Who would have taken the time to fold that and set it there? So John is a little curious. And so he says, finally, the other disciple got the courage, and he goes this, finally, the other disciple, the one who reached the tomb first, in case you missed it before, he then went inside. And then John gives us a formula. Don't miss this. Don't miss this. John gives us an equation. It's a formula, an equation that he wants you and I to remember because it takes you and I to the epicenter, the core of the Christian faith. This is how you get in, and this is how you stay in. Ready? He says this in verse 8. He saw and he believed. He saw something, and then his heart opened up and he believed. John is talking about himself. He's like, I saw, and then I believed. In other words, John would say this. I saw something that changed my life. It freaked me out. It changed my life. The resurrection, I don't know how to put it. The resurrection turned my world upside down. It reframed everything. It reframed how I saw the world. It reframed how I saw God. It reframed how I saw Jesus. In fact, I realized in that moment that everything Jesus had ever said was true. And Jesus had said some obnoxiously crazy things. I mean, one time we were with Jesus and we were the disciples and we're sitting there talking, and Jesus is like, hey, fellas, look at this. He said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And he didn't mean like, if you've seen my face, you've seen God's face. If you've seen my heart, if you've seen my love, if you've seen my care for people, you've seen the Father's heart. Now, we didn't believe that when he said it, but now all of a sudden I'm like, OMG. Jesus said crazy things like, don't worry. He made commandments. He's like, do not worry. And before we're like, is that even possible to not worry? Who can do that? But all of a sudden now we're realizing, what do we got to worry about? God's got it, right? Jesus said things like, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Before we, no, there's a lot of things to be afraid of. But all of a sudden now we realize, can't hold us. What's there to be afraid of?
That's right. Amen.
Death ain't got nothing on me, Jake. I'm telling you, John and Peter's life changed that day. They were never the same again. It flipped. And then over the next few days, the other disciples came out of hiding, and they discover that Jesus is alive. They personally see him, and they talk with him. And John records several of those conversations. You can read them on your own. But before I end today with a quick prayer, I want to read just one of those conversations because it's particularly interesting and it's relevant to what we're kind of talking about and thinking about today. John says this, get this, in verse 24. He says, now Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the other disciples when Jesus appeared to them. Thomas probably left Jerusalem. He didn't just go hide somewhere in the city. He left the town. And so he made his way back in finally. And when he gets there, the other disciples see him. They're like, Thomas, we have something to tell you. We've seen Jesus. We've seen the Lord. But Thomas wasn't stupid. Thomas wasn't superstitious. Thomas was a realist. He lived in this world. And he had just spent 3 years of his life following a false Messiah, and the last thing that he wanted to do was go chase a ghost the rest of his life. And so this is what Thomas said. He said, fellas, unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and unless I literally can stick my finger and poke it into where the nails were, unless I can stick my hand in his side where that Roman soldier had pierced him, and blood and water was gruesome. Unless I can stick my finger into there, I won't believe at all. I ain't gonna believe. John, I love you, man, but your word just isn't enough for me. Peter, I love you, but I think you're seeing things. You've gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, brother. Rest y'all, I love you guys, but listen, man, I saw Jesus die on the cross, and I am positive he is still dead. I mean, who could blame him for feeling that way and saying that? But John tells us that a week later, and it's interesting, the details that he gives us. A week later, the disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Now, before I tell you, if John was here right now, he would make this disclaimer to you and I. He would say this. He'd say, I know that what I'm about to say to you is going to sound a little weird, but I'm telling you, this is how it happened. My testimony is true. I have suffered greatly over the years for telling people what I saw. In fact, when I wrote that document that you're reading now, I was recovering from being boiled in oil. Yeah, the Roman emperor at that time, a guy by the name of Domitian, had ordered that I would be put into a vat of boiling oil. And so trust me. Trust me when I tell you that this is what happened. I'm telling you. He says, even though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them. And he said, peace be with you. Jesus said that because he scared us half to death. He was always sneaking up like this. We're just like, oh. Then he said to Thomas, he turned to Thomas and he said, Thomas, give me your finger. Put it in here. You see my hands? I want you to reach your hand and I want you to put it right here in my side. In other words, It's me, Thomas. It's not ghosts. It's me. And then Jesus said something that he had told his disciples before, but it never made sense to them. It never made sense until this moment. Jesus said, do not doubt any longer. Believe. Over and over throughout the years, Jesus had told them, do not doubt. Don't doubt. O ye of little faith, don't doubt God. And it always they just kind of ignored him when they heard that. They're like, really? And now, suddenly, that command made total sense. Why? Because when you see your friend dead on a cross one day, and then 3 days later he's alive, you realize that the limits that you've placed on God need to be lifted. Thomas said to him, my Lord, and oh my God. As if he could say anything else. I mean, what would you say? And it's interesting. I have a feeling that Jesus just turned to Thomas and said, Thomas, listen, man, don't freak out too much. I understand why you doubted. In fact, don't let the rest of these guys give you a hard time about your doubts. Don't let them give you some nickname, Doubting Thomas, because you doubted, because they all doubted too, right? Not a single one of them believed that I'd risen from the dead until they saw me. And now Thomas, he said this, because you have seen me, you have believed. There's that formula, right? He saw, and then he believed. I saw, and then I believed. But now, Jesus adds a little amendment to that. He adds a little something to the formula. And it's as if he knows that this story is going to be told for generations and generations for all time. It's as if, when Jesus said this, don't miss this, it's as if he knows he had you and me here today in mind when he said it. Listen to what he said. He said, you have seen because you believe because you have seen. But blessed are those who have not seen and yet have still believed. It's us. In other words, it's possible to not see and yet still believe. You know people like this. You're like, how does it they get to that point? How does it they believe this? It's possible. You might go, well, how? How is that possible? Well, Jesus would say, blessed are those who believe, not because they've seen, but because they've heard. They've heard the testimony of people like John, right? Who wrote down what he saw and suffered greatly for that. Jesus would say, blessed are those who believe because they have heard the testimony of people like Peter, who was basically an illiterate fisherman, probably never traveled more than 3 or 4 miles away from his home for most of his life. And then one day something happened, and Peter began to travel all over Europe and Asia, testifying, sharing what he saw until he was crucified for saying that Jesus was alive. Jesus would say, blessed are those who believe because they have heard from people like Paul and Matthew and James and countless others all throughout the ages. And yet they still believed. I'm telling you, it's possible to not see and yet believe. All we have to do is to believe those who have seen. And then perhaps we'll see ourselves. In fact, that's exactly how John ends his story. He says this, I want you to know that Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this letter. But these have been written so that you can believe that Jesus is the Son of God. You can take it to the bank on my life, on my word. And that by believing, you may find life in his name. In other words, believe what I say, and then you'll see for yourself. It's interesting. Interesting. Today, we got some people are getting baptized. We already had dozen people get baptized, and maybe you were raised in a tradition. Baptism is just simply an outward symbol of an inward thing that took place in your heart. And so baptism is also a way, get this, for people who have seen God at work in their lives to encourage others to give God a chance to show himself to them in their life. In other words, the people that are getting baptized here in a few moments, they have seen and they believe that Jesus is alive. And today they want to testify in front of all of you.
Amen. Woo! Come on.
They're like, I'm standing up on this, right? And so I want to invite those who have came prepared to get baptized to go quickly and to change and to get ready. I want to invite the band to come on up. Look at all these people. Let's give them a hand as they go. Amen. That's cool. This is going to be good. This is going to be good. We're about to have a party. Okay, so listen, real quick. Let me pray real quick, and then we'll have the band come, and then we'll have these guys get baptized. Would you bow your heads and hearts with me real quick? I just want to talk to those of you who are skeptical, because I haven't always believed. And I will tell you, just follow along with me. Years ago, when I was 21, I went to church for the first time in a long time. I was bribed by a pretty girl. She said, come on, I'll buy you lunch. So food and girls, two of my favorite things. I was like, I'm in. I went to church, and listen, I went there, and I heard a message similar to this. I was told for the first time, or I heard for the first time in my life, that Jesus died on a cross for my sins, and that he raised from the dead. And if I believe that God would change my life, that God would come into my life, and he would help me. Well, I was kind of desperate. I was like, you know what, maybe, I don't know, but I'd like to find out. And so I said a prayer that day. Don't miss this. And I want to recite that prayer again, and maybe this could be your prayer. My prayer was this. I said, God, if you're out there, if you're really out there, show yourself to me. I want to see, and I want to believe. But for me to believe, I got to see. And I said that prayer. And I will tell you, it was a weak little prayer. It was a goofy little prayer. But over the next few days and weeks and months, I was honest. I kept my eyes open. It was weird. God began to show himself to me. He began to show up in different ways and help me in certain things. And at first I thought, oh, this is just a coincidence. This is coincidence. But at some point I'm like, OMG, this is not coincidental anymore. This is like something's happening. And now, 30 years later, I'm telling you, I've seen too much. I can't go back. In fact, I dare to say this, but I think I would be willing to maybe die testifying to what I've seen. I can't be convinced. There is a God. He is real, and he has rocked my world. I will never be the same.
That's right.
And so I just want to, if you're there and you're skeptical and you doubt, join the club. All of us have been there, and all of them were. It starts right here. So maybe just say this prayer right there where you are. Put him to the test. God, if you're out there, you're really out there, show yourself to me. I have heard a story about how you raised Jesus from the dead. I'm kind of about 20% on this, maybe 30. But I'm going to give you a chance to show yourself to me. I'm going to open my eyes, and I'm going to let you do your thing. Come, show me who you are. Help me to believe. Show me. Let me see. Help me to believe, I pray. In Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Hey, I'm serious. Whoever I'm talking to, that you're a little in and out on this, try it. Okay? You're gonna see some people that did that same prayer, and God has showed up. And so let me, as our people that come forward to get baptized, I want to just tell you real quick. Number one, let me do this. Let me do this. Sister. Yeah, this gal right here in this wheelchair. Sister. Janice. Can't she hear me? She's watching me on the screen. I'm talking to her. You're getting baptized today, right? 73 years old. Told me last week, I want to get baptized. Janet Reiser. Janet was baptized as a baby. But she's like, I said, why are you getting baptized now? She goes, because I've become born again. I gave my life to Christ a year and a half ago. I've been waiting to get baptized. This tank is a little tough to get into, so we're going to baptize her down at the hot springs in a month or so. We're going to coordinate that. She's at Casey's Pond. But today, we're going to baptize you old style with a little pitcher of water on you. And I want you guys to go off, because here's what she does. When people stand in the tank, this is what they're doing. This is what baptism is. I was alive like Jesus, and then I'm going to die someday, and they're going to bury me. And that will be the end of my life and the story. No! Baptism, that's not the end. They come up out of the water, which symbolizes their hope that we shall live again. Just as Jesus came back from the dead, that's our hope. And so that's what she's doing. She's going to be last. I just want you to know Janet and her story. And so when she gets baptized in this place, we need to raise the roof on that. We got several other people. Let's go ahead. Are you guys ready? You guys ready? All right, let's do this. Come on, let's party.
Let's celebrate. It's alright.
This is our friend Teddy. Everybody get over Teddy.
Let's celebrate. It's alright, baby. We're gonna have a good time tonight. Let's celebrate. It's alright, baby. Let's celebrate.
Addison is up
It's
next.
alright. 'Cause it's a celebration.
Everyone, this is
It's a
Addison.
celebration. Celebrate good times. Come on. It's a celebration. Celebrate good times. Come on. It's a celebration. Celebrate good times. Come on. It's a celebration.
Let's give it up for Cuba.
Good times. Come on. It's a celebration. Celebrate good times. Come on. Let's celebrate. Celebrate good times. Come on.
Our new special one, this is Beckett and his dad.
It's a celebration. Celebrate good times. Come on. 'Cause it's a celebration. 'Cause there's a party going on right here. Celebration, that's the right. So bring your good times and your laughter too. We're gonna celebrate and party with you. Come on now,
All right, I
say
think we have one more. This is Sweet Lily and her dad Richie. Everybody give it up for them.
we're gonna celebrate and have a good time. It's time to come together. It's up to you. What's your pleasure? Everyone around the world. It's a celebration. It's a celebration. Celebrate good times. Come on. It's a celebration. Celebrate good times. Come on.
This is Janice, everyone.
Oh, man. Wow. I don't, man, if that doesn't get you fired up, your wood is wet. You got to go dry it out, man. What a great day. What a great celebration. Thank you for being with us. I hope you have walk out of here with a little extra skip in your step and hope in your heart. Jesus is alive. Amen. Amen. God bless you guys. Happy Easter. Thank you for coming. We'll see you.
'Cause it's a celebration. Celebrate good times. Come on. 'Cause it's a celebration. Celebrate good times. Come on. It's a celebration. We're gonna have a good time tonight. Let's celebrate. It's alright. We're gonna have a good time tonight. Let's celebrate. It's alright, baby. celebration.